The use of cannabis as a drug for medical and recreational purposes is becoming more and more commonplace. People are using it as a way to cope with mental illness and physical pain, and others just to have fun. But the question remains, what happens when you stop smoking weed, especially after a long addiction cycle? Marijuana is a hot topic that triggers a lot of polarized views. In fact, out of all the drugs and topics that I talk about, whenever I talk about ganja, the comment section gets blasted with very strong opinions. So before I begin, let me make it clear that I'm not telling you to do or avoid anything. I'm just sharing my personal experience with post-weed depression and addiction, and how to help shift your mindset if you are one of the few who do struggle with this. Anyways, marijuana is a plant that I have been acquainted with since I was a wee lad at 12 years old. It completely transformed my life. It made music sound better, food taste more delicious, and life just generally more interesting. Marijuana revitalized my childlike curiosity and fascination of the world, and in other ways it helped me creatively. Subjectively, I thought marijuana was a gift from God that improved my life in every way possible, but objectively speaking, over time my grades, memory, and overall drive suffered greatly from it. To be honest, if it wasn't for marijuana, it probably would have been something else due to the void in my heart that needed to be filled. What I do know with the power of hindsight is that it wasn't the plant's fault. It was my own innate desire to escape reality and my own traumas that caused me to chase artificial highs instead of being present in the moment. Ever since I was a small child, I've always been attracted to escaping reality, whether it was eating high doses of Twix and lollies, binging Simpsons, or losing myself in Pokemon Blue. After almost 2 decades of irresponsibly flooding my nervous system with THC, naturally this left me with an ingrained habit. I quit for a few cycles, lasting a bit longer each time, but somehow I would always find myself getting back on the high horse. This video isn't about teaching you tips and techniques on how to prepare yourself for quitting weed for good, if that's what you're after, but to share my post-weed depression identity crisis and how to deal with that. Comment below if you'd like to see more videos on the nuance of cannabis, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Just because of my history with marijuana, this does not mean that I'm against this plant, period. Most of my friends smoke, and I'm in a place in my life where I can be around people smoking and even roll them a joint. I'm an excellent roller, without being tempted. I quit for personal reasons and to get to that next level of my life, which I knew I wouldn't reach while I'm smoking weed. Smoking once a week or once a month is just not an option for me anymore, because I know that the more I feed the beast within, the more it will grow until my willpower cannot overcome its temptations anymore. This happened to me time and time again, and I would have to be a complete fool to trick myself into thinking I can do it occasionally based on my past history, at least for the time being. I understand that people have different genetic makeups and history with certain substances, and just like alcohol, the reality is that most people will never develop alcoholism or have a significant problem with it. Just like many people will never develop a serious marijuana addiction, but a lot of people do, and I'm a testament to that. But to ignore the people that do legitimately have a problem is incredibly heartless, as it disacknowledges someone's addiction, which probably took a lot of pain to finally admit. Whether you agree with someone or not, it's never a bad thing to try and understand where they're coming from. The sad reality of today is that when you share your faults to the public, some will cast stones and use it against you. This may even be part of the reason why feeling depressed after quitting a long-term marijuana addiction can be so tough, because many people don't even look at it as a legitimate addiction, which makes addicts feel even worse about themselves. At least when you quit alcohol or cocaine, you virtually get support from everyone. But when you quit weed, some people just make fun of you. This is of course due to either the in-denial addict getting projected or just plain ignorance. So this, along with self-identifying as a stoner, hanging out with stoners, listening to stoner music and watching stoner pop culture, made it incredibly difficult to break free from my stoner identity. Surprise, surprise. This struggling pattern of leaving an identity and creating a new one isn't exclusive to the marijuana habit. Just like changing your identity from a fat slob to a healthy fit person, or leaving a cult that your family is a part of, or even something as simple as changing careers. This all requires a lot of willpower and a complete restructuring of your entire identity. You not only have to build a new you, but you have to actively dissolve the old you. And the ego will throw all kinds of resistance at you to stop or slow down this change. Yes, there's a chemical factor of flooding your brain with crazy amounts of dopamine via cannabis. So of course when you suddenly stop, your dopamine baseline will be significantly lowered, therefore making your everyday reality not as exciting. Things become a bit dull. Movies aren't as immersive, food doesn't taste as good, and your mate Matt just doesn't seem as funny as you used to think. Your subjective reality is settling into baseline reality. And this dissonance and resistance is what many people call post-weed depression. But when you're not prepared for it, especially when you're a heavy smoker, because let's face it, dose definitely matters, life can hit you like a freight train, giving you no time to get out the way. This is completely normal. And to be fair, this isn't necessarily universal because some people quit weed and have no problems at all. Perhaps they've pre-programmed their mindset before quitting, so when they finally put down the joint, they were prepared for what was to come, therefore not making it feel that bad. Speaking of feeling bad, we haven't exactly been too kind to Mother Nature. It's no surprise that with the excessive use of plastic, deforestation and burning ungodly amounts of fossil fuels into the atmosphere, our planet's climate hasn't been doing too good. But thanks to the sponsor of this video, we can help reduce this mess. Ren is a simple and easy way to make an actual positive difference in this climate crisis. Ren is a website where you can calculate your carbon footprint, which helps you counteract it by funding a carbon reduction project of your choosing. As you guys probably know, I am a frequent traveler to the Amazon rainforest, and I've spent quite a bit of time with the indigenous population. And every time I go there, it breaks my heart because the deforestation just gets worse and worse. One of the projects on Ren that I personally resonate with is called Rainforest Foundation US, who helps the Ticuna community of Buen Jardín de Cayaru in Peru. This project gives indigenous Amazonians the tools they need to protect their rainforest home. So once you sign up and make a monthly contribution to offset your carbon footprint, you receive monthly updates from the projects you support. It's actually really cool because you get to actually see where your money is being spent on. You can start offsetting your carbon footprint today by learning more on ren.co and support whichever project most resonates with you personally. The first 100 people who sign up using the link in the description will have 10 extra trees planted in their name. How good is that, mate? Thank you to Ren for supporting our channel by sponsoring this video. Please give them and the earth some love by signing up using the link below. For those who've been following my channel, you know that I haven't been sponsored in like 2 years or something like that. I don't want to promote some dumb mobile app or try to get you to buy some stupid product you don't need. So it was actually very refreshing to see a company that I resonate with and actually does some good. So help out your mate Tommy by supporting Ren. Use the link below. Anyways, back to the video. Colors may seem muted, your girlfriend starts getting on your nerves, and you realize how much you actually hate your job. You realize you're not where you want to be in life. Stress and anxiety start seeping into your consciousness, scattering your mind into a chaotic mess of, what am I doing with my life? Am I happy? Should I do more? Depression is a misunderstood and misused term. We live in a society that spoon feeds us the lie that we must always be happy, otherwise we have a mental disorder. Depression is when your soul is screaming at you that something isn't right and you're not living up to your potential. Sometimes it can be a purely chemical imbalance, but even chemicals have a non-physical mental counterpart to it. We intuitively understand this when we say mind over matter. When I was working a job I hated, living in a toxic environment, eating like crap and not exercising, weed was the lifeboat that helped me keep my head above water. It made me feel okay with where I was at without putting too much pressure on myself, that I must do something to change ASAP. It fooled me into thinking I was being more present when, in reality, it made me escape the present. When I quit weed, who was my best friend at the time, the lifeboat disappeared. I had no light, hardly knew how to swim, and this resulted in me choking and swallowing seawater. My eyes were red, my throat coarse, and my body exhausted. At the beginning, as I'm flailing around trying to keep afloat using only my body, I was suffering and scared. But this fear and anxiety pushed me to learn to cultivate calmness and become a better swimmer. I had no choice. It's sink or swim, right? Eventually I swam, lying on my back until I saw a lighthouse and landed on shore. By the time I hit land, I was stronger, fiercer, and more grateful. There's nothing wrong with using a lifeboat when you need it. Sometimes we're so exhausted that if we didn't have some kind of aid, we'd probably drown and die. So I actually had a near-death experience when I was very young in Brazil, where the sea current swept me out. Over time, the shoreline just got smaller and smaller, but the current was too strong that no matter how hard I swam, I just couldn't overcome the current. I was absolutely shitting myself. I thought I was going to die. And then all of a sudden, I see my cousin slowly swim towards me. And of course, I hopped on her back and she swam me to safety. And my family yelled at me and because they were scared to death, understandably. The sea overpowered me. And if my cousin didn't come to save me, I may not be here telling you this story right now. However, many times we don't have enough faith in our own inner strength that can carry us out of crazy situations. And so we rely on external aids to get us through. Sometimes we do have the strength to swim ourselves, but we never give ourselves that opportunity to truly test ourselves. Generally speaking, humans like to stay in the comfort bubble of chasing pleasure and avoiding pain. All I can say is that for me, going through the post-depression of losing my identity was a lot like floating in the abyss with barely any energy to swim. My dopamine was depleted and my brain was completely hardwired to chase pleasure all the time. I had to be okay with not being okay until my baseline leveled out and I was okay. It's times of extreme pressure that really shows us what we're made of. And sometimes we need to be thrown in the deep end in order to be forced to swim without a life raft. This is a foundation you must keep building upon until one day you surpass whatever you felt on any external substance. Until one day you can smoke again if you choose to and feel zero attachment to it. Maybe you smoke again and instead of getting you high, it actually lowers your state of being. This is possible too. I remember as a teenager, I used to love getting drunk. Oh my God, it was the best. But now, I derive no pleasure from getting drunk. It makes me feel tired. I actually feel like crap, especially the next day. It doesn't even give me like a short-term boost. Like, I'm not just saying this, but I genuinely feel better sober than at least being drunk. I remember my old drunk mates used to make fun of me saying that I'm boring because I don't drink and that I don't know how to have fun. The difference is that now I have purpose and the will to improve myself, therefore giving me awareness that I could be doing something more useful with my time. Whereas when I was a kid, all I wanted to do is have fun. I didn't know any better. At the end of the day, this was the stage that I was in, which I must honor. I avoid it not because I want to derive myself from pleasure, but because it no longer gives me the pleasure it once did. I've reprogrammed my mind. I don't know if I can say the same thing about marijuana, because let's be honest, the high is just absolutely amazing. Hence why it's always been my favorite drug of all time. And maybe it will take a few more years to reach this level, if I ever do. The point of this story is to demonstrate how living life with purpose is an artful discipline that can be developed over time. We can all naturally raise our baseline for well-being without the use of artificial chemicals. And this can fundamentally change your identity and make you realize things that you once thought were impossible. Besides, we all have substances that we form an attachment to more than others. And marijuana, for me personally, is one of those plants that I formed a seemingly unbreakable bond with. I cannot speak for everyone, of course, but this is how it was for me. This is what post-cannabis depression is really about. Learning to deal with the breakup and going through trials by fire of being self-reliant. It's about saying goodbye, which is why we are always tested to see if we are truly done. Without fail, every time I quit weed, the universe always tests me by somehow offering me free weed in some way. Dude, it's crazy. Like, I'm being dead serious every time. But this gives me a choice. Do I enter yet another cycle of the same shitstorm, or do I learn and move on? Of course, it's possible for some people to be genuinely friends with their exes, but for others, this is a terrible idea. This is fine and really depends on the individual and their personal relationship. Suffering is growing pains, and if you learn to redirect depression towards leveling up, you'll thank God that you went through this hell to begin with. It gives life an opportunity to bear fruit and go to that next level, as this forges your character and allows you to navigate reality with more tools. But you have to be tested in order to transcend. I still respect marijuana. I completely support legalization and I still hang out with stoners. I believe in marijuana as a legitimate medicine for chronic physical illnesses, but as of this moment, I'm not sick. Therefore, why would I need to take medicine, right? I think in a way, marijuana taught me to be self-reliant by showing me the dark side of being over-dependent. And for that, I thank you, Santa Maria. A truly great teacher eventually teaches the student in a way that they surpass even them, so that they're no longer dependent on them anymore. and can move on to an even greater teacher to learn from. This, my friends, is me moving on and finding the next great teacher to learn from. And this doesn't limit teachers to human mentors, but spiritual practices like breathwork, perhaps entheogens like mushrooms, books, or God Almighty himself. Who knows? Whatever you're into. There's always a teacher in everything, right? And besides, the human body has natural cannabinoid receptors that we can hijack with natural practices anyways. I have a lifetime supply in my body, baby. And it doesn't cost me a nickel. This was post-weed depression. Hope you got something out of this. And if you did enjoy this, please share this video around with someone who you think could benefit from hearing this. And subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thank you to all our patrons for supporting us, who help us continue doing what we do. I love you all. Much love. Peace.